Welcome to another episode of our mini podcast, I Built a Company That Makes a Difference by B1. Here we talk to founders of sustainable businesses to get their takes on how and why they started their companies and lessons learned along the way. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Leah Gans, the founder and chief creative officer of Les Miss, an e-commerce and NYC-based brick-and-mortar clothing label focused on environmental sustainability and promoting small artists and designers. So started in 2020, Les Mis features clothing, jewelry, and accessories and is inspired by Leah's childhood animals and nature. So Leah, thanks for being on today. I've been pursuing your website and it's like taking a little bit of a trip back into childhood. I love all of the photos of you as a kid and your costumes, etc. I love it. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, super excited.
Wonderful. And where do we find you today?
Right now I'm at home. I haven't gone into the store yet, but I'll be going in a couple hours. So yeah, I'm local in New York City. I'm about 10 minutes away from the shop.
Oh, nice. Okay. So it's about, I don't know, what is it, 9 a.m. in New York right now?
Yes, yes, 9 a.m. I usually go into the store around 10-ish. I'll probably go a little later today, but yeah.
Okay. What does your morning routine look like before you get into the office?
Usually I wake up pretty early, and will make my coffee, check my emails, kind of get on top of things before I go on into the store. And like this morning I was organizing, we have a big fashion week show coming up. So I was organizing all of our styling stuff, making sure everything came in. Yeah, I just try to get on top of anything I can get on top of before I actually head in and meet with. I have one other full-time employee that I work with full-time, so I like to get a little organized before I go in and meet with her for the day.
Okay. So you are a morning person.
I would not say so, but it's been forced. I've figured it out. I'm definitely up late at night as well. I think I do some of my best work late at night. So it's a little bit mixed, but recently I've been waking up really early. I just got back from a trip to Europe, so my time zone's also a little messed up. So I've been waking up a little earlier, which is kind of great. Yeah.
Nice. So what can you tell us about yourself, Leah, and your background? Like I said, I love your About Us section of your website because it really gets into like who you are. And there's so many photos, like adorable photos of you as a child. So can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. I grew up well, I was actually born in New York City. My parents are from here. We moved to California when I was about 3 years old. So I grew up in San Diego. I was always a huge animal lover. I've been a vegetarian my whole life. Always had a lot of pets growing up. My mom never really knew how to say no when we wanted a new animal. So I was always like really inspired by pets. I've always loved fashion. I definitely didn't really know anything about it, and I would wear pretty insane outfits. I would wear costumes to school a lot. I went through a phase where my mom would have to like hand braid me a yarn tail and I would wear one every day. Um, I've had like a weird phases for sure, but I always was really into dressing myself, and I was really lucky that my mom always let me pick out my own clothing. Both me and my brother. My brother went through a phase where he would wear Tupperware on his head to go out of the house, and it was completely accepted, which was great because I think it really allowed us to explore like our own identities. Um,
That's
Especially
awesome.
in terms of fashion. Yeah, yeah. So my parents might have been a little embarrassed, but they grinned and bared it, and we really wore whatever we wanted. But yeah, growing up, I was always like art was always my favorite subject. I was never a super analytical person. I have pretty bad ADHD, so school was a little bit of a struggle for me at some points. But I got really lucky and had really great support systems, and was able to navigate it and end up getting into my dream school, which was NYU, where I really got to study what I wanted to study and focus on what I wanted to focus on. And then I was able to really excel. It was just really hard for me to focus on the mundane subjects that I didn't personally find interesting. I think that's true for a lot of people with ADHD.
Tell me this, how early in life did you know you wanted to be a designer?
So I wouldn't say that I knew I wanted to be a designer very early, but I knew I wanted to be in fashion very early on. My paternal grandmother was always very into fashion, and she would always take me shopping, or we'd talk about it, or she would teach me about her favorite designers. And it was always something that I found fascinating and I was drawn to. Um, I think throughout all of middle school and high school, I told everyone that I was going to move to New York and work in fashion, and that was my plan. Um, but then I actually got to NYU and I was in the Gallatin School of Individualized Study. So you kind of create your own major. And I initially started doing a fashion major, and I had a lot of internships in the fashion industry that I really didn't enjoy. And I ended up actually changing my major just because they were so Excel based. I was just doing spreadsheets all day, and I thought that was what it was going to be if I worked in fashion. I didn't even really see myself ever being in a more creative position. I didn't know I would be like capable of design necessarily. Um, so I thought that that was kind of my only way into the fashion industry, and I didn't see myself doing that. So I ended up studying psychology, and that's what I graduated with. And after graduation, I started grad school, and it was COVID. I graduated in 2020. So around the same time, I was just home a lot and I was making jewelry for fun. And I ended up selling it at a flea market, and it did really well. And it just kind of took off from there to the point where I ended up, dropping out of grad school and really pursuing this. So I would say that I knew very early on I wanted to be in the fashion industry, but there were a lot of um hesitations at certain points.
I have two big questions.
Yeah.
The one thing I've never heard of before. So I went to school in the US as well. By school, I mean university, but I have never heard what did you say is it individualized studies where you create your own major? I've never heard of it. Can you
Yeah,
explain this concept? Is this unique
absolutely.
to your school, to NYU, or is that
I think
kind of
that
it's just
there
everywhere
might be,
now?
I don't think everywhere has it. I think there are a few other schools that have similar programs. But I would absolutely recommend it to anyone. It was amazing. So yeah, the school is called Gallatin at NYU. It's the smallest program at NYU. I think they take about 300 incoming freshmen each year. And I could be wrong about that, but I think that's was at least the number when I joined. And yeah, basically there's a few core requirements, like you have to fulfill one math or science class, or one there's a lot of history requirements, but they're very flexible and you can really fulfill them in your own field of interest. And basically at the end of in your senior year, you essentially write a thesis. It's called a rationale at Gallatin, and you basically just defend your concentration, defend your major in front of a panel of professors that you choose, and you either pass or fail. Um, and yeah, for someone who learns the way that I do and has a really hard time focusing on things that don't interest me, it was the perfect program. I really felt I was able to excel there. It's very writing heavy, very limited test taking. Yeah, it was just like absolutely perfect for me. All the classes are really small. It's like 10 to 20 people in a class, very discussion based, sitting in a circle around a table. Um, yeah, it was really my ideal field of study. And you have a couple years, you don't have to define your concentration immediately. You have some time, and I changed mine halfway through, and that's totally accepted and encouraged. So my what I ended up concentrating in, Gallatin gets kind of like a funny rap because everyone's concentrations are kind of ridiculous and long and like really long-winded. So mine is no exception to that. But my concentration was child and adolescent psychopathology and education policy. Um,
Mm.
so I was really interested in like child psychology. I primarily, during my time, you're required to have internships in Gallatin. So I primarily worked with children on the spectrum. And that was what I was really interested in pursuing. And then also the education policy aspect, like just from my own upbringing and growing up with ADHD and needing accommodations, I'm really passionate about education policy in general and making sure that kids get the individualized education that they deserve. So yeah, that's what I ended up studying. I didn't end up using it, but
Maybe
it
not
was
yet. You're still a young entrepreneur, so it
that's
might
true.
swing back around.
That's true. You never know. I definitely am still very passionate about it, but I have a lot of interests and sometimes you just have to pick a lane at some point. But
Yeah, that's true. You can't do everything simultaneously necessarily, but maybe one after another. So that sounds like a really, really unique program um of study. I've never heard of that before, and now I feel like I'm going to go into a little rabbit hole looking that up after we're done with our conversation here.
yeah,
So
definitely.
you were
Yeah.
doing fashion internships at about the same time as you were finishing up your undergraduate degree, or was that after when you started your graduate degree? Did you start going into fashion then?
I actually started fashion internships my freshman year of college. So it was my first semester freshman year, which is I think uncommon in general, but at Gallatin, it's like every single student is doing that. I actually felt like I was really behind at first.
Oh,
And so yeah, I did that freshman year. My first internship I actually really loved because it was like very hands-on. I got to go to New York Fashion Week with them and help with the show, and it was just a dream come true. And it was very cool. But then that internship was very short. I was only like a temporary intern for their market and fashion week because it's an LA based company. So
hmm.
after that, my internships that were a little bit longer term, I was just sitting at a desk all day and doing Excel, which there's nothing wrong with, but I can't work that way. I can't focus that way. It's just not the way my brain works. So that's what kind of scared me off for a little while. Um, I did get advice from my advisor that like this is a very competitive industry. A lot of people really want these jobs. If you're not loving it, then and there's something else you're passionate about, you should pursue that. And I still stand by that advice. I think she was absolutely right. I don't think either of us saw me doing what I'm doing now, but yeah.
Okay. Well, then let's fast forward to what you're doing now. For the audience, again, I'm going to repeat this. If you haven't been to the Les Mis website, go check it out. It just is like a jump back into nostalgia. It's really lovely. So, can you talk to us about how you started that, how you made the transition from just like making jewelry in your apartment during COVID to flea market to then saying, you know what, let's just do this thing. Can you talk to us about maybe that first year?
Absolutely. So the first year after I graduated from college, it was 2020. I was having a hard time getting a job. So I was working in retail at another jewelry store actually, and that's when I started getting really inspired. I thought I saw what they were doing, and I was like, I think I could do this. I have ideas for like some jewelry that I'm not seeing out here. And I got a really large gift card, or not really large, I think it was a couple $100s, but enough to buy a ton of beads and like supplies for Christmas that year. And I ended up spending it all on like beads and crafting supplies. And I just watched a lot of YouTube videos and taught myself how to make jewelry. And yeah, I was making it, posting it on Instagram, selling to friends, selling on Depop. And then eventually I had been a customer at Artisan Fleas for a long time, which is a marketplace with tons of different vendors and they have locations in a bunch of different cities. Um, and so I had shopped there in LA, I'd shopped there in New York, and I was like, I should look at into the process of becoming a vendor there. That would be really cool to like get in front of people and see how my jewelry um goes over. So I ended up applying and getting into the one in LA, which is closer to where I'm from. So I signed up for a date when I was back home. And that actually made it a lot easier for me because I could borrow my parents' car and bring like the tables and all the setup stuff that you need. Because in New York, that's a little bit hard to navigate. Um, and yeah, I set up there. I did my first market and it went over so well. I made so much more than I could ever make at like my retail job. And I knew that this was like something real that I should really pursue. So the following weekend, I had to come back to New York and I signed up for their Brooklyn market. And I ended up staying, I did that following weekend at the Brooklyn market and I ended up staying there for a year and a half. I was there every weekend. And it was
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it there. I made so many other small business friends, which I think was really vital to me ending up opening the store. So there's such a great community there. These are still some of my closest friends I met there, and the age range is huge. Like, I have friends that are 10 years older than me, 10 years younger than me. We're all doing the same thing and we're all in the same phase of life. And it's a really cool, unique community. Um, so yeah, I was there for like a year and a half. It's a great flea market, I think, to start out at, especially if you're in New York, because you can leave your stuff there, which is really great.
Yeah.
That's one of the hardest things to navigate in New York. Luckily, at one point I was dating someone that had a car, and that's why I was able to do some other flea markets, but it's really hard to figure out if you don't have a car, and it's a lot of stuff to move around the city. So that was a great opportunity for me. I think about 6 months into it, I ended up quitting my retail job because I was doing well enough on this, and I also needed to dedicate like all of my time at home to making jewelry. I was just putting beads on string like all day, every day during the week. And then on the weekend, I would be selling all weekend. And I was loving that. It was really fun, but it did get to a point where I couldn't keep up with my inventory anymore. I didn't have enough stuff to really be at the flea market. And that's when I started looking into manufacturing. And around the same time, I started thinking about really opening a store. At that point, I wasn't making any clothing, but I had all of these friends that did make clothing that I had met at these flea markets, and we were all kind of getting priced out of artisan fleas. They kept raising their rent prices. I think that they were a little lower during COVID. And so they kept raising their rent prices. They kept making their policies a little stricter. Some people who had been there since the very beginning were kind of getting priced out and pushed out. And none of us really liked what was going on. So I started really thinking about, how can I like make something where we can all sell our stuff, not get screwed, like still make a profit, and not have to also spend our whole weekend here, because a lot of my friends were also like, I work all week making these clothes and I'm here all weekend and I really don't get any free time. So that's when I started really toying with the idea of opening a store and started looking at places.
Okay, so you opened, wait, when did you launch a website first, your e-commerce portion of
Yeah.
your store, or was it brick and mortar first?
No, yes. So I had I think I launched the e-commerce probably about 2 weeks into, I mean, not 2 weeks, 2 months into doing the flea markets, like being
Okay.
at fleas. Um, but um it wasn't really, I wasn't selling a lot online. I was doing all of my business in person
Right.
at the market. There were a few online sales, but I didn't have a large following at that point. I
Mhm.
didn't have, you know, a lot to drive people to my website other than like pushing it in person.
Mhm.
So most of my business was in person, which remained even after opening the store. We were mainly a brick and mortar business until about 6 months ago. And now we're like 50-50. But
Oh,
um,
interesting.
yeah, so we were doing like all of our sales in person in store, which I do think is really unique to our business. I think it's because I opened up before growing like a larger following. And now we're just at the point where the online business is really taking off.
Mhm.
So yeah, yeah.
So when did you open your storefront?
December of 2021.
December
Um,
2021. Okay.
yes. And so yeah, we've been open for like over a year and a half now.
And how did you find the storefront? Was that a journey in and of itself?
Oh yeah, yeah, that was a huge journey. It was really difficult. I worked with a couple different brokers. I found one that I really liked. But it's really hard to get a commercial lease in New York City. Like, the landlords want to interview you. You have to give
Mm,
them a full business plan. They don't want to put someone into the space that might not be able to pay the rent.
right.
So they want to make sure your business is legitimate. They really evaluate all of your financials, all of your like plans for the space and all of that. So I definitely had to get really organized and get really professional and pitch it to these guys, because it's most of them also are these like older men that looked at me like I was a child. Were pretty condescending. Landlords in New York City in general are not the best people in the world. So it was definitely a little bit of a difficult thing to navigate, but I think I just came in really prepared and I knew what I wanted. I knew I was going to have to negotiate with these people that I might not like, but just kind of grin and bear it and get what I wanted at the end of the day. And so I think that's what I was able to do. And I ended up getting really lucky. At the time I was looking at space, rent prices were pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just because we were still right out of COVID. A lot of stores had recently closed. I actually think a lot of small businesses, especially in the neighborhood Les Miss is in, opened up around the same time because of those rent prices being a little low.
Mm.
So it's nice. We're seeing kind of this resurgence of small business in like Nolita and Soho, which I think is very exciting. And a
Yeah,
lot of
that's
people,
nice to hear.
yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool. It's because I know for a long time it was just the chain stores and now we're really going back to I think how it was before. Which is very exciting. I get a lot of older women coming into the store being like this is so great to see. I remember when this area used to be like this.
That's
Um
awesome.
yeah, yeah. So it's very cool. So yeah, that was definitely a process. Just like legally and financially and figuring all of that out, but I definitely sought advice from everyone in my life I possibly could, got all of the help I could. That's one of the biggest things I think I learned opening this business is that you can't do it alone. I relied on the help of so many strangers, acquaintances, friends, building out the store in itself. Like I ended up having strangers from the street helping me. Like it was really an eye-opening experience for me at how kind New Yorkers are and how much people look out for each other, which I really, really love. Um, but yeah, definitely,
That's
definitely.
fantastic. And what
Yeah.
about in that first year? I'm sure there are many things, but what's one thing that stands out in particular that you would do differently if you had the foresight back then?
I probably would have given myself more time to build out the store. I negotiated into my lease that I got, I think it was the first 2 months free, and that was my time to build out. And then I really didn't have the money to not open right away. I needed to open
Hmm.
right away and start making sales so I could pay the rent.
Hmm.
Um, but that was very rushed. Trying to like I had to put floors into the store. I didn't have heat or AC. I didn't have anything. So trying to get that all done in that time frame. And I'm a very specific, I had a clear vision for what I wanted the store to look like. And I'm a very stubborn person. I wasn't really willing to settle for anything less. And it was just, I was at the store with no heat in the middle of winter until like 5 a.m. every night slash morning,
Wow.
painting the walls, building furniture, doing stuff like that. And thankfully we had neighbors next door was an Italian restaurant and those guys ended up helping me set up the store. So many people that I didn't even know ended up helping out and I'm so grateful. But
That's lovely.
yeah, it was really wonderful, but I definitely think giving myself more time, I would definitely advise anyone else give themselves more time, especially if it's your first time doing this and you're doing it by yourself. It's a lot of work. I had no like construction experience, so I don't know why I thought I was going to be able to do it. I mean, we got it together, but I definitely would have given myself more time. And then the only other thing I can think of is that I wish I had negotiated getting an apartment in the building into my lease.
Oh, that's
I think
interesting.
that would have been really nice. Yeah, like to be able to live above the store. There's no way I could afford an apartment in that building, but maybe if I had tried to negotiate that into my lease, I could have gotten it. It just didn't even cross my
Hmm.
mind at the time.
That is
But
interesting. Okay,
yeah.
that's one I've not heard of before. Okay. And then for everybody who doesn't know Les Mis, can you talk about your inspiration and your mission? Was it something that, like, even at the very, very early days, you were very purposeful about the mission and what you wanted the store and the products that you're selling to look like and be like and feel like? Or is this something that evolved a bit over time? Talk to us about that.
Um, Even if I didn't articulate it in the very beginning, I think I was always very clear about what I wanted. I think it was always very nostalgic and very focused on um sparking joy in one's inner child. I think that's my primary mission. I love to reflect on my childhood and be inspired by my childhood and do things that I think would make my younger self happy. Because I mean, she's still a part of me and it still sparks joy for me every day. And I think, yeah, even in the very beginning, my jewelry was very almost like camp like something you would make at sleepaway camp. It was nostalgic. It was fun, childlike. A lot of children do buy my stuff, even though it is like made for adults. People come in the store every day and ask, are these kids' clothes? I'm like, well, they're not really sized for children, but sure, anyone can wear them. Um, so yeah, I think that even though I probably didn't put it into words or articulate it, I think that was always a pretty clear mission for me. I think it just felt really natural that that's what I was interested in making, and that's what I'm inspired by. Um, and yeah, it's everything. Like our newest collection coming out is very like ballet and dance inspired. And growing up, I was a dancer my whole life. Um, so it's just things like that. I love to draw from different parts of my childhood, whether it's like my childhood pets or activities or outfits. There's one skirt I made that is based on like something I wore when I was little to a dance. So things like that. Yeah.
I saw that. That was very cute. The
Thank
white and
you.
the pink, that was very adorable.
Thank
And
you so much.
do you have like an average or typical customer?
It's a good question. I get asked this a lot, and it's hard to say because yes, our average customer I would say is around my age, like around 20 to 30, um, mostly women. That being said, there's such a wide range. Men wear our clothing, non-binary people wear our clothing. There are older women that come in all the time. There are children. So it really there is something for everyone, I'd say. But we do target towards, I would say I'm my own target customer. So that's kind of just because that's what I know and that's like how what I know to make. But that being said, I think a lot of people resonate with it. My mom wears the clothes, my grandma wears the clothes. My brother has a couple pieces. Like it's there's a wide variety for sure.
And what does the day in the life of Les Mis look like? So what do you, I know you guys host events and you, from what I've read, really try to nurture a physical community around yourself and online. So what does a typical day look like? And that might be unfair. So you might have to expand that to a typical week. What does kind of a day or a week look like in for Les Mis?
Sure. So I would say right now we work out of the store. So we do have a sales associate that like helps customers, but we don't have an office or anything yet, hopefully soon. Um, so Maddie, who's my director of business development, and I work together in the store Monday through Friday. We're in constant collaboration with our vendors and like people doing pop-ups. So we have people coming in all the time to meet with them to show us their stuff. Every day is really different. We recently, at the beginning of the summer, we started doing vintage. And so that's been a big part of our time is like just sourcing, photographing, and listing vintage pieces. That tends to be really time consuming. But factors into like our sustainable model. And I really do love vintage clothing, and that's a lot of what I wear. So it did feel important for me to like include that into our business. But yeah, I would say on a weekly basis, we're really just working. We're on our computers a lot, but we're also talking to people a lot and having meetings and working with vendors. And then almost every Saturday we do a pop-up event. So we do a lot of preparation for that during the week. We scout out like local artists. We'll usually bring in a tattoo artist or a piercer or tooth gems or tarot readers or things like that alongside whatever brand is doing the pop-up for that week. And we're in collaboration with them over what they would prefer to have. We collaborate with our vendors on making flyers for the pop-ups. We do a lot of graphic design work. Yeah, I would say every day looks really different because both it's really just me and Maddie full time. We got to work with an intern over the summer, which was amazing, but we're all wearing every single hat. So we're all doing a million things. So it's really hard to say what our routine is because it depends on the week. Like right now, we have this New York Fashion Week show coming up. So that's pretty much all we're working on because that's been very time consuming. So it's a lot of like ordering shoes and organizing things and communicating with our models and finding lighting professionals and photographers and things like that. So it really depends. If we have a shoot coming up or a new collection coming up, that's what we're focused on. Otherwise, we're doing customer service, responding to emails, listing products, graphic design. social media, all of that. So it's hard to say. We don't have really a set routine other than the hours that we work and come
Just
in.
kind of the get it done,
Yeah,
new
exactly.
business, startup entrepreneur mentality. I like that. It's exhausting. I mean, this is why myself and most of our audience are entrepreneurs themselves. So it's like the grind that never ends because, as you say,
Right.
you're wearing every hat, but then you get to have your hand in all of the decisions and you get the direction. And it's also very, very satisfying and fulfilling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really do love it at the end of the day. And I don't think I really get tired of it. I think it's just every night around like 2 a.m. I come up with like a list of what we need to prioritize for the next day, and that's what we do. And it really works for me. The way my brain works and the way that I get work done, it's really ideal. So
Good. And so in addition to your own brand, you work with lots of other vendors. How many other vendors do you work with and how do you find and identify them?
So right now, I think we have about 5 vendors in the store, maybe between 5 to 10 at any given time. But what we're primarily trying to transition to is really just doing pop-up events with the vendors, since our clothing line is growing so much and we're also getting so many vintage pieces in. We're not having a ton of space in the store to have the vendors there full time. And we prefer, honestly, to do the pop-up events with them where they're able to like actually meet their customers and tell their story, and present their pieces. And we think it goes over better. So in that, like, anyone can really do a pop-up with us. We A lot of it at this point has been friends, people I met doing flea markets. This community is like so strong and tight knit, as I'm sure you're aware of. So it's a lot of word of mouth. People come into the store every day and say, like, how do I get involved? We'll get their email and we stay in touch with them. I am trying now to come up with a more formulated system
Hmm.
because it's just become a lot of people coming to us with interest. And I think we do need to be a little more organized about how, um, moving forward, how we set up a pop-up or how you become a vendor, etc. So that's something I'm actually working on now. But up until this point, it's really been just a lot of relationships, a lot of meeting people on a daily basis. We're always in the store, so we're always there to meet people. Um, that can be a little overwhelming at times, but it's really fun. I love to meet all of these like cool creatives and artists in the city. And so many of them have become like some of my closest friends, which is really amazing.
And remind us, for the audience, where is your store located?
It is in Nolita. It's on Mott Street between Houston and Prince. So kind of like Soho Nolita border. Um, yeah, and I love that neighborhood. I love the location. There's so many other cute shops nearby as well. So it's definitely worth checking out.
Cool. So I'll have you plug that again at the very end when we're doing our closing. So let's transition a little bit to business. I have a lot of questions for you about marketing and things that have worked and not worked. But the first question that I have is what was the last thing that you did, whether it was a pop-up or a product that you designed that the reception you were surprised about? So either in a good way or in a bad way, something that just like took off that you had no idea, or something that totally bombed that you were like, what on earth happened here? What was the last big surprise that you had?
It's a good question because I do feel like my intuition is pretty strong about these things a lot of the time, but there's every collection, there's always a piece that I kind of just throw in there where I'm like, this is pretty weird and I think only I will wear it. But you never know. I'll throw it in there and that always ends up being the best seller. And I'm always surprised by that. So one example was like the Daphne tank. It's a drawing of my cat with like wings on like a tank top. And I remember putting it into the collection, being like, this is kind of weird. I think I would love to wear this, but I don't really know if anyone else would. Some of my friends gave me some like not great feedback about it, and that's been one of our best selling products the entire time we've been open. We've restocked it time and time again.
That's
And I
amazing.
do thank you. And yeah, I do feel like that keeps happening, and it's kind of just a lesson to me to like trust my instincts and to just make what I want to make, because if it makes me happy, it's going to make other people happy too. Um So yeah, that's kind of been something I've learned over the course of, we've made a few collections now, and now I'm really feeling comfortable just leaning into completely what I want to wear and what I want to make. And just knowing that that usually is well received because our customer base, has the same style or interest that I might have. So that's been a really cool and like exciting thing to learn.
And
Um,
you just said like continuing to do the things that make you happy and the things that you like. How, now that you've done this for a couple years or a few years, how do you find you're having to evolve either your operations or your styles or what you're producing or who you're partnering with? How do you feel like, because this is so fast moving, how retail is just like insanely fast moving, how do you feel like you are having to evolve?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm definitely making bigger and bigger collections every time because I'm learning our products. I mean, I didn't start making our first clothing. Our first clothing line came out the first spring we were open. So it was like 7 months into the store being open was the first time I ever designed clothing and produced it. And it just did so much better than anything else we were selling at the store. So I think I've just learned to really lean into that and focus on that, and really I had to teach myself really how to design clothing, how to prepare that to send to a manufacturer, how to build a tech pack, all of that. Um, so I think that's one of the biggest things to evolve is just like focusing on that, making larger collections, having more options. I get feedback from customers every day because I'm in the store, which is such a privilege to get to hear, where people are like, oh, I love this, but I wish it came in this color, or etc. And so I'm always taking note of everything that our customers are saying and taking that into consideration for future collections and future drops. I've also been really focused on securing collaborations. I really like working with other artists. So we just, in the beginning of the summer, we dropped a collection with Ice Cream Color. He's an artist named Humberto Cruz, and we used his artwork, and I designed clothing using his artwork. And that's one way I'm trying to kind of keep evolving and working with new artists, and that exposes us to new markets and their followers. Um, and it's also just really fun for me. I love to work with other creatives and love to meet people. So I think that's something that I'm really focused on for the future. We're planning some collaborations coming up that I'm super excited about, and that's definitely something I want to continue doing.
Okay, that's awesome. So then how do you, this is kind of a broad question, but how do you market yourself? And what are the kind of activities and channels that you use for new customer acquisition? Kind of everything that you just mentioned is in some way new customer acquisition and marketing and being introduced to new audiences and growing your visibility. But is there any kind of hard and fast marketing acquisition channels or activities that you focus on?
Definitely. Instagram is definitely our primary social media channel, and we run ads on Instagram. I think that's been super helpful. We don't put a ton of money into that, but I think, even just playing around and doing A/B tests and seeing what works, and it I think it does make sense to be putting more money into that in the future. I think it's really effective. We also work with some influencers, and that's been super helpful. There are like specific influencers that we work with that we see really great results from, and some not so much. So it's been kind of narrowing that down and then continuing to gift to those influencers where we really do see results. Um, like I said, yeah, the collaborations like Ice Cream Color had a pretty large following. So doing that collaboration with him was really helpful for us. We also do a lot of like cold emailing to journalists and trying to secure um publications, and we've gotten a few publications that way, and that's been so helpful. Most recently we sent gifting to Bella Thorne, and she actually ended up wearing it and being photographed in it, and that was
Oh, very
super
cool.
exciting. Yeah, that was so exciting. I love her, and it was that really helped us. We gained a lot of followers from that. The other big thing is TikTok, and I'm 25, and I sometimes feel like I'm too old for TikTok. Like I don't really understand how it works. So that was one of
That's
the main things
hilarious.
about our
That's very
intern.
funny.
Yeah, I'm literally so young, but even I can't figure out how to use this app. So um that's one of the biggest things. Like we had a 21-year-old intern this past summer who we loved, and she was amazing, and she really took over our TikTok account and did amazing with that. So that's something I want to continue, like to bring in younger people to help us with those aspects that me and Maddie might not understand as well. But I just know I hate making TikToks. It's not my thing, but it's so effective and it helps so much. It's so important. So yeah,
Yes,
those
it
are the
is.
main.
Oh,
I know
TikTok.
it
Yeah.
feels exhausting to me. There have been so many times where I've spent like 4 hours filming a video and then accidentally deleting it. Like I
Oh my
have no
God,
idea how to use
that
it.
gives me anxiety just hearing that
Yeah,
story.
no, it's horrible. It's horrible. So I do really love to have someone else's hand in that. But it's definitely something I'm working on learning myself and making sure I can do as well. Um, but those are the main things we use for marketing. We haven't really outsourced marketing at all at this point. We do everything ourselves, and I think it's pretty effective. But as we want to continue growing, I'm sure that's something we'll look into eventually.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we're at this part of the conversation where it's just rapid fire. I ask everybody these same 6 or so questions. So the
Okay,
first
great.
one is, what do your plans look like for the rest of 2023? We have just shy of half a year left as of recording this conversation. What does the rest of the year look like for you?
Absolutely. So we have our largest collection to date coming out September 6th. We're doing a New York Fashion Week show at a cafe bar that's really close to us. That's actually my friend's place. That we're really excited about. We've put tons of resources into it. It's going to be a really big production, and I really can't wait for that. So that's coming out to debut like our biggest collection. It's our fall winter collection. It's very dance inspired, very inspired by my childhood and my experience in dance. And that's kind of the biggest thing happening in 2023. We have some more events coming up that we're super excited about. We collaborate with our dear friends at Junkyard Thrift every month to do a pop-up with them. So we'll continue that throughout the end of the year and into next year. We have been doing some collaborations with different like alcohol brands and things like that to make these pop-up events extra fun, which has been really great. And yeah, we're doing one thing I'm really excited about is we started carrying Sunny Angels this year. I don't know if you're familiar, but they're like these
I'm
little
not.
collectible, they're these little collectible toys. They come in blind boxes. So you don't know which one you're gonna get. And it's for some reason like it's adults who are obsessed with them, but they're all the rage. They sell out constantly, and we just became a retailer of them, which was super exciting because I've been obsessed with them for a long time. And so we're gonna host a big Sunny Angel like meetup swap where people can trade. That's something I'm super excited about. Oh, we just got a photo booth in the store, which is very
Oh,
exciting.
that is
Um,
exciting.
yeah, this company, Majestic Booths, set us up with a which was amazing. And yeah, those are like the big things for the rest of 2023. We'll
Awesome.
see. A bunch of things always come out of nowhere, but
Sure. Yeah. Then 5 months is a long time. What about on the flip side of that? What can you foresee being your biggest challenge for the rest of the year?
um right now, I think the biggest challenge is working with the manufacturer to make sure we get everything on time because we make all
Mhm.
these future plans like the show and the shoot for the collection and things like that. And production is just always behind because we work with a really small manufacturer that produces in really small quantities, which is what we want to be doing. But it's hard to keep everything on time because we're not a fast fashion company and we're not
Sure.
working with that type of manufacturer. So I think just trying to be flexible with dates and knowing that sometimes things have to change or we might have to do pre-order if something's not ready, etc. I think I'm pretty used to that at this point, but that's probably the biggest challenge that we face.
All right. So what about these 3 questions? What is your biggest, or what do you feel like is your biggest success to date?
Well, last month was the best month we've ever had, both in store and online. I think growing the online business has been one of the largest successes to date, just because it's something I really always wanted to do. It also costs us a lot less. There's a lot less overhead in doing online sales versus brick and mortar. And so that's been really exciting to see that reach like 50-50 online and in store has been really exciting. We've really brought our brand to more of a global audience. We're shipping to Australia, China, the UK, Canada. We're getting orders all over the place. We recently started wholesaling our line. So we're also carried in some stores around the United States and in Canada.
That's
That's been
amazing.
exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's been really exciting. And that really just started, and they've already started placing like reorders and been selling out. So I think those are probably the two things that have been the most exciting
That's
for us.
significant. Okay, what about the flip side of that, which is what do you feel like is your biggest failure to date?
Um, it definitely would involve manufacturing. I think that the ice cream color collection, while I'm very excited about it and it ended up going over very well, there were some significant manufacturing errors that we were unable to resolve. And I ended up moving our manufacturing to a new company, which I'm thrilled about. And it's been so much better. But that was extremely disappointing for me, just because I am a little bit of a perfectionist and, I have a vision for how I want my product to be. And when it doesn't come out the way you want it to, it's very, very disappointing. And then you already put all this money into it and you still have to put it out and put your name behind it. And I think that was really hard for me, but ended up actually going over really well. So I'm happy about that. But there's just been in the beginning working with the manufacturer, there were a lot of issues. It's hard to transition from making everything yourself to, sending over your designs and trusting them into someone else. And I think there's been a few products that I would say have been failures. But it's always a learning experience. And now I just know how to even like make my tech packs more technical and make sure that there's no room for those errors in the future.
And would you say that's the most important lesson that you've learned?
It's one of them, definitely. I think it's hard to say if that's the most important. There's been so many just interpersonal lessons I've learned as well, and how to work with people. I honestly think the biggest lesson I've learned is like how to be a leader. I don't think that
Oh,
comes naturally
interesting.
to me. Yeah, I don't think that comes naturally to me. I'm also hiring mostly women that are my age because I am so young. And I think I have a really hard time not just being everyone's friend and not just people pleasing all the time. And I think I finally found people that, even though I am their friend and even though we are equals, still respect me and still understand that times I have to be a boss and I have to say, like, this is what we have to do, this is what we have to get done. But I think that's been one of the biggest barriers for me. That doesn't come naturally to me. I really don't like to be in charge in that way. And I think giving feedback can be really hard. Um, so yeah, that would probably be, and honestly, that probably was my biggest failure in the beginning as well. That's probably an even larger failure because I think in the beginning I wasn't a leader in the way that I should have been. I think I let people kind of do whatever they wanted to, and that was kind of the work environment I wanted to curate. But maybe it was just like hiring the wrong people, or I think it had to do with me and like the way that I was leading the team, because we have the same people now, and now we are able to like work really efficiently and get everything done. And it was just a big adjustment for me to be able to step into that role.
That is a super honest and really, really valuable answer. Thank you for sharing that because I know I've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs in our community, just the B1 and EPOP community that have expressed something similar kind of behind the scenes, but that is a super important lesson. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it can be hard, especially as a young woman. I think it's really hard to be able to step into that role. We're kind of taught our whole lives not to be bossy, not to be, um, I to just want to be. And I think that's been one of the hardest things for me to overcome. And yeah.
Well, good for you. Okay, if you could get 85% of the world to adopt a single behavior, what would that be?
To stop shopping on Shein and Zara and H&M, honestly. I think I totally understand it. Even just limiting it, shopping on those platforms less, you can spend just as much money like shopping secondhand. There's too much clothing in the world, and these working conditions are unacceptable. And I think that would be the biggest thing that I really push my friends to do, push everyone I come across to do. Like, just go to a thrift store. If you want to spend that little on clothes, that's totally fine. I totally understand that, but there are other options, and you can get cooler stuff. So that will last you a lot longer. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I'm always trying to convince people to adopt, even just to decrease their consumption in some way.
I love that answer. I totally agree with you. All right, last one. Where can we find you? Online, in real life, social media? Tell us.
Absolutely. So we are at Les Miss NYC, LESMISS NYC on Instagram, TikTok, the threads, all the platforms, Pinterest. So you can find us there. Our website is www.lesmissnyc.com. And we are also located at 283 Mott Street in Nolita between Houston and Prince. And yeah, we host events almost every Saturday. So if you've never been to the store before, that's a great time to come in. It's a lot going on, a lot of fun people to meet. A lot of people make friends at the shop. So it's a great community and definitely check us out.
Leah, thank you. A big, big thank you for stopping by. Thank you so much. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So nice
And
talking.
yeah, thank you very much. I next time I'm in New York, I would like to visit your photo booth. I mean, I'd like to visit your store, but I would really like to visit your photo booth. And
Yes.
everyone in the audience, um, we'll see you on B1. Make sure you go check out Les Mis either online or if you're in the New York area, stop by the store and we will see you on B1.